The aroma of roasted coffee beans, a rich, comforting blanket, usually settled Alex's nerves, but today, a sharp, metallic tang of disapprobation cut through it. He hadn't even heard her approach, so engrossed was he in the rhythmic hum of the espresso machine and the low murmur of contented chatter. He was tucked into his favorite corner booth at the Daily Grind, a discreet spot that offered a panoramic view of the bustling morning rush. His rush, though no one here, certainly not the woman now glaring down at him, knew it. Her voice, brittle and laced with an unwarranted authority, sliced through his calm. "Are you going to order anything? Or are you just loitering?" Alex blinked, slowly lowering the small, well-worn notebook he'd been scribbling in. His pen, a simple BIC, felt suddenly heavier than usual. He looked up, past the expensive, perfectly coiffed blonde bob and the designer sunglasses perched on her nose, to meet eyes that were narrowed in overt suspicion. He was dressed casually today, a faded band t-shirt, jeans, and well-worn sneakers. His usual uniform when he wanted to blend in, to truly feel the pulse of his establishment without the forced formality of a suit and tie. He liked observing, seeing where the natural flow of customers took them, which tables were most popular, how his baristas navigated the morning chaos. This wasn't loitering. This was his morning ritual, his silent, intimate audit. "Excuse me," he finally managed, a polite question that barely masked the flicker of amusement in his eyes. He'd encountered types before, certainly, but this woman exuded a particular brand of self-importance he found almost fascinating. "You heard me," she retorted, her voice gaining volume, drawing a few curious glances from nearby tables. "You've been sitting here for over an hour. I've watched you, just taking up space. This is a business, young man, not a public library. Some of us actually pay for our coffee." She gestured vaguely with a manicured hand towards the long line snaking towards the counter, implying that his mere presence was somehow detrimental to the grind's commercial success. Alex felt a strange mix of emotions, a spark of irritation at her presumption, a surge of pride in the thriving line she unknowingly praised, and an almost irresistible urge to smile. The irony was so thick he could almost taste it, richer than any of the single-origin brews they served. He thought of Liam, his head barista, who would be silently fuming behind the counter if he knew how a patron was treating the boss. "I assure you, ma'am," Alex began, his voice calm, almost too calm, "I'm not causing any trouble. Just enjoying the atmosphere." He deliberately kept his response vague, a challenge almost. He wanted to see how far she would push. He watched her features tighten, a subtle flush creeping up her neck. She was clearly not used to being challenged, especially not by someone she perceived as a mere idler. Her eyes scanned his casual attire, confirming her initial judgment of him as someone who didn't belong, someone who was exploiting a public space. He knew this look well. It was the same look he'd seen on some of the city's wealthier residents, when they encountered anything that didn't fit their preconceived notions of propriety. Enjoying the atmosphere, she scoffed, a short, sharp laugh escaping her lips. "This atmosphere is for paying customers. Do you have a receipt? Have you bought anything?" She leaned in slightly, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper, as if sharing a grave secret, "because if you haven't, then you're simply loitering, and that's against the rules. I'll have to speak to the manager about this. It's truly unacceptable. People like you drive away good business." She puffed up, clearly expecting him to wilt under her gaze, perhaps even scramble for an excuse or quickly order something. Instead, Alex simply met her gaze, a small, unreadable smile playing on his lips. He picked up his pen again, tapping it thoughtfully against the side of his notebook. "I wouldn't want to cause any trouble, ma'am," he said. His voice smiled. "But I assure you, I'm quite comfortable where I am." The woman's jaw visibly tightened. Her eyes narrowed further, a silent promise of retribution. "Oh, you'll be comfortable. All right," she huffed, turning on her heel with a dramatic swirl of her expensive trench coat. She marched purposefully towards the counter, her gaze fixed on Liam, who was currently steaming milk with the practiced ease of a seasoned pro. Alex watched her go, a genuine smile finally breaking through. He knew Liam would handle it with his usual unflappable calm, probably offering her an extra shot of espresso to cool her down. What this woman didn't know, however, was that Liam was one of his most trusted employees, privy to Alex's sometimes unusual, hands-on management style. What she also didn't know was that the very manager she sought was currently sitting in a corner booth, enjoying his loitering, and jotting down a new idea for a seasonal latte. He chuckled softly to himself, shaking his head. This was going to be an interesting day. He had a feeling this wouldn't be the last he saw of Karen. The incident with the trench-coated woman, Karen, as Alex had mentally dubbed her, initially served as little more than a peculiar start to his day. He'd even shared a quick, knowing glance with Liam, who, true to form, had expertly diffused Karen's brief complaint about a gentleman who won't order with a smooth offer of a free sample of their new nitro cold brew. Alex had assumed that was the end of it, a fleeting moment of self-important absurdity. He was wrong. Karen became a fixture. Not daily, but with an alarming frequency. She would materialize whenever Alex settled into his preferred observation spot. It was almost as if she possessed some uncanny, self-appointed loiterer radar tuned specifically to him. Her approaches quickly lost their initial subtlety. The second time, she didn't just stand. She paced. Still here, she'd bark, her voice cutting through the gentle clatter of ceramic and the hiss of steam wands. Don't you have a job? Somewhere to be? Alex, mid-thought about optimizing the counter flow, would look up, a polite, almost bewildered expression fixed on his face. Just enjoying the quiet, Mum, he'd respond, carefully neutral, testing her limits. He found a strange, dark humor in the situation. It was like a bizarre social experiment, a real-time study in unwarranted entitlement. His annoyance, however, began to fester. What had started as amusing turned into a persistent, low-grade thrum of irritation. He wasn't just observing his business anymore. He was also bracing himself for Karen. She'd graduated from snide remarks to direct, public confrontations. One Tuesday morning, as he was reviewing supplier invoices on his tablet, appearing to be just another customer with a laptop, Karen strode directly to his table. She slammed a copy of the day's newspaper down next to his arm, the thud making a nearby couple jump. Look, she hissed, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at an article about local homelessness initiatives. There are places for people who can't afford to pay. This is a place of business. You're taking up valuable real estate. Alex felt his jaw tighten. The words were a personal affront, not just to him, but to the very ethos of the daily grind. He poured his life savings and countless hours into creating a welcoming space, a genuine community hub, not some exclusive club for the city's elite. He carefully closed his tablet. Ma'am, he said, his voice dropping slightly, I believe I've made it clear that I'm a paying customer, just like anyone else here. He hadn't, of course, explicitly stated he was a paying customer, but the implication was obvious. Karen, however, seemed impervious to logic. I've seen you, she countered, her voice rising. Day after day, just sitting. Taking up a prime spot. It's bad for business. Someone needs to do something about you. Her gaze flickered to a young barista, named Chloe, who was wiping down the adjacent table, her eyes wide with nervous apprehension. Chloe, a bright, usually bubbly college student, mumbled something about all customers being welcome, but Karen cut her off with a dismissive wave. Oh, please, you're too naive. This establishment has standards to uphold. Alex felt a protective surge towards Chloe. It was one thing for Karen to target him. It was another entirely to badger his staff. He wanted to shout, to reveal himself, to cut her off with the ultimate mic drop. I am the owner, you insufferable woman, but something held him back, a morbid curiosity, perhaps. or the faint, lingering hope that she might, just might, realize the absurdity of her accusations. He also understood the power of a grand reveal, and the longer he let her escalate, the more satisfying the eventual fall would be. The next few encounters followed a similar, increasingly aggressive pattern. Karen would either hover near his table, sending him icy glares, or, more often, approach him directly with thinly veiled insults. "Still haven't found a job, dear?" she'd ask, loud enough for others to hear. "Perhaps you should try the library, they have free Wi-Fi." Once, she even tried to sit at his table, pulling out a chair, before he casually, but firmly, placed his notebook over the empty seat. "Occupied," he'd said with a polite smile, the tension palpable. Her face had gone blotchy with indignation. The staff, initially amused, were now genuinely concerned. They knew Alex was the owner, but he'd explicitly told them to let him handle it, to not blow his cover. They'd exchange worried glances with him whenever Karen walked in, their silent apologies evident. Customers, too, started noticing. A few regulars, who often saw Alex at his usual spot, would offer him subtle, sympathetic nods, or even attempt to strike up a conversation with him. Perhaps to deter Karen, he overheard snippets. "Is that woman always so intense?" or "Poor guy, just trying to read." The communal understanding of Karen's obnoxious behavior was a small comfort. One particularly busy afternoon, Alex was doing a quick inventory check on his phone, a task easily mistaken for casual web browse. Karen, spotting him from the entrance, let out an audible gasp, loud enough to stop a young couple mid-order. She marched straight to the counter, bypassing the line, and demanded to speak to Liam. "That man," she declared, pointing an accusing finger at Alex, "is still here. He's been here for hours, just taking up space, not buying anything. He needs to be removed. It's disgraceful." Her voice was shrill, cutting through the general din, causing heads to turn. Alex watched from his table, a strange mix of dread and anticipation coiling in his stomach. The show was escalating, and he knew, deep down, that the curtain was about to rise on a much bigger scene. The annoyance had sharpened into a steely resolve. Karen had pushed him too far. The very next day, she was back, not in her usual power stance, but lurking. She sat 2 tables away from Alex's preferred corner, nursing a single, untouched herbal tea, her eyes darting between him and the counter. She pulled out a small, almost comically oversized notebook and a pen, occasionally scribbling furious notes. Alex watched, a smirk playing on his lips. He imagined her writing, subject, male, nondescript, still occupying prime real estate. Appears to be working on a device, but suspiciously often looking at ceiling tiles. He'd catch her trying to discreetly snap photos of him with her phone, the flash occasionally giving her away. He'd subtly adjust his angle, making sure she only got a blurry shot of his ear or the back of his head. It was a ridiculous dance, and Alex found himself oddly enjoying the absurdity of it all. This was the show she wanted to put on. He was simply allowing her to perform. Her investigation wasn't limited to him. She began targeting his staff. Alex watched from a distance as she approached Chloe, the young barista, at the counter during a lull. Karen leaned in, speaking in hushed, conspiratorial tones, occasionally gesturing towards Alex. Chloe, bless her heart, was a terrible liar. Alex could see her trying to maintain a neutral expression, but her eyes kept darting to him, a frantic, almost pleading look in them. When Karen finally walked away, Chloe immediately caught Alex's eye, a desperate shrug conveying her helplessness. Later, during his break in the back, Alex found Chloe looking stressed. She asked if he were a new hire. Chloe whispered, wiping down a counter with too much vigor. Then she asked if you had a track record of loitering. I just said you were a regular customer. She didn't buy it. She kept asking if you worked here, if you were sure you didn't work here. She even asked if I knew your name. Alex simply patted her shoulder. You did great, Chloe. Just keep doing what you're doing. Don't worry about her. He appreciated his staff's loyalty, their confusion, and their unwavering respect for his secret. The following day, Corinne upped the ante. She intercepted Liam as he was restocking the pastry display, a fresh box of croissants cradled in his arms. "Excuse me," she demanded, her voice sharp. "As a frequent and valued customer here, I feel it's my duty to address a serious issue." Liam, ever the professional, nodded patiently, but Alex saw the subtle tension in his shoulders. Corinne then launched into a tirade about the man in the corner, her voice carrying further than she probably intended. "He's clearly not buying anything. He's driving away customers. He's probably some sort of vagrant." Alex saw Liam's jaw clench, a vein throbbing slightly in his temple. Liam was fiercely protective of the daily grind, and even more so of Alex. "Ma'am," Liam interjected, his voice surprisingly calm despite the clear anger simmering beneath the surface. "Mr. Alex is a regular. He comes in frequently. He's never caused any trouble. All our customers are welcome here." Corinne scoffed. "Regular, he just sits. Does he pay his bills here? Does he contribute? Or does he just mooch off your Wi-Fi and scare away paying customers?" She even pulled out her phone, trying to discreetly record Liam's response. Liam simply stared at her, his composure unwavering. "That's between Mr. Alex and the management, ma'am. I can assure you, we handle all our customers with respect." Alex watched the exchange, his internal struggle intensifying. His patience was wearing thin. The game was becoming less amusing and more of a genuine nuisance, bordering on harassment of his employees. He saw the toll it was taking on Chloe's bright demeanor, the controlled anger in Liam's eyes. It was one thing for Corinne to try to humiliate him. It was another to disrupt the harmony of his business and stress his dedicated team. He needed to act, but on his terms. He wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a panicked response. He would wait for her to overplay her hand, to commit fully to her folly. And he knew she would. Corinne's next move confirmed his suspicions. She appeared at Alex's table, not with a query, but with a statement. Her notebook was clutched in one hand, her phone in the other, a triumphant gleam in her eye. She wore the smug expression of someone who believed they had amassed irrefutable evidence. "I've spoken to your staff," she announced, her voice resonating with finality. "They're clearly intimidated by you. They wouldn't admit it, but I know what's going on. This is my last warning to you." She leaned in, her voice low but laced with menace, her eyes fixed on his. "If you are still here in 10 minutes, I'm calling the corporate office. I have all the proof I need. You're going to be out of here, and frankly, I hope you never set foot in any establishment like this again. Consider yourself officially reported." She then turned on her heel and strode purposefully towards the main entrance, pulling out her phone and visibly dialing. Alex watched her go, a slow, determined smile spreading across his face. The moment had arrived. She had committed. The 10 minutes Corinne had allotted evaporated faster than foam on a poorly poured latte. Alex, remaining in his corner booth, watched her. She was pacing near the entrance, phone glued to her ear, her voice a low, agitated murmur. He imagined her exaggerating his transgressions to some bewildered corporate drone on the other end, painting a picture of a defiant vagrant disrupting a pristine business. A slow, almost predatory smile spread across Alex's face. This was it. The moment she had so eagerly built up, the moment of her ultimate, self-inflicted downfall. Suddenly, Corinne snapped her phone shut with a triumphant click. Her eyes, burning with self-importance, scanned the room, landing squarely on Alex. She then fixed her gaze on Liam, who was currently taking an order from a woman with a stroller. With a dramatic flourish, Corinne marched directly towards the counter, stopping inches from Liam. "There," she declared, her voice sharp enough to cut through the cafe's usual hum, drawing immediate attention. "The corporate office has confirmed they're sending someone immediately to address this. And I want to make sure you, as the acting manager, are fully aware of the problem." She gestured wildly towards Alex, who remained seated, an unreadable expression on his face. Liam, ever the professional, placed the ordered pastries on the counter and turned to Karen, his posture rigid but his voice calm. "Ma'am, as I told you, Mr. Alex is a valued customer here. We don't have problems with our customers." "Oh, really?" Karen scoffed, pulling a small, crumpled notebook from her purse. "Then explain this." She thrust the notebook towards Liam. "Pages of documented evidence, hours of loitering, taking up prime seating without purchasing, harassing staff. I even have photographic evidence." She brandished her phone, showing a blurry, zoomed-in picture of Alex's back. "This man is a menace. He's driving away good, paying clientele like myself. I demand he be removed immediately, and I demand an apology for allowing such behavior to persist." Her voice had risen to a near scream, echoing through the now silent cafe. Every head had turned, conversations had died. A few people had even pulled out their own phones. Sensing the unfolding drama, Alex slowly pushed himself up from the booth. He walked towards the counter, moving with an unhurried grace that contradicted the escalating tension. He stopped a few feet from Karen, his hands casually tucked into his pockets. "Is there a problem here, ma'am?" he asked, his voice softer than hers, yet carrying an undeniable weight. Karen spun around, startled by his proximity. "Yes, there is a problem," she shrieked, her face reddening. "You're the problem. You've been here, day after day, leeching off this establishment, taking up space, making customers uncomfortable. I've called the corporate office, and they are sending someone to fire you. You should be ashamed of yourself." She jabbed a finger at his chest, her eyes alight with righteous fury. "They're going to see all my evidence, and you're going to be out on the street where you belong." Alex let her finish, letting every word hang in the air. He met her gaze, his eyes calm, almost pitying. Liam, standing beside them, shot Alex a subtle, questioning look. Alex gave him a barely perceptible nod. "Karen," Alex began, his voice clear and resonant, cutting through the stunned silence. He used her name, a small detail that seemed to unnerve her slightly. "You've made quite a case, haven't you? Documented evidence, photos, calls to corporate. Very thorough." He paused, letting the words sink in. He then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, metallic object. It wasn't a phone or a wallet. It was a single, engraved key, a master key. He held it up, letting it glint under the cafe's warm lights. He then looked at Liam, a faint smile touching his lips. "Liam," he said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of command, "could you perhaps remind our concerned customer who I am here?" Liam's face, which had been a mask of professional calm, split into a broad, relieved grin. He turned to Karen, his eyes twinkling. "Ma'am," he began, his voice clear and resonant, "this is Alex. He's not just a regular customer, or someone loitering. He's the owner of the Daily Grind. He founded this place 5 years ago. This," Liam gestured around the bustling cafe, "is his business." The words hung in the air, heavier than the silence. Karen's triumphant expression shattered. Her jaw went slack. The color drained from her face, leaving her a ghastly white. Her eyes darted from Alex to the key, then to Liam, then back to Alex, searching desperately for some sign of a joke, a prank, anything but the truth that was now crashing down on her. The crumple of her notebook in her hand was the only sound she made. The owner. She stammered, her voice a mere whisper, completely devoid of its earlier venom. But you were just sitting there, loitering. I called. Corporate. I have proof." Her voice rose slightly in a pathetic attempt to regain control, but it was too late. The dam had broken. Alex stepped closer, his voice still calm, but now infused with a quiet power. "Indeed, Karen, I was sitting there, observing, learning, making sure my business, the one I built from the ground up, was running smoothly. My employees," He glanced at Liam, who gave a small, proud nod. We're well aware of who I am. And as for your proof and your calls to corporate single quotes ... double quotes, Alex leaned in slightly, a wry smile playing on his lips. I am corporate. And I can assure you, no one is getting fired today. Except, perhaps, for one very misguided accuser. The finality in his tone, coupled with the dawning realization on Karen's face, created an almost palpable ripple of understanding throughout the cafe. A few gasps were heard. Some customers exchanged wide-eyed looks. A low murmur of agreement and satisfaction began to spread, replacing the earlier stunned silence. Karen, defeated and utterly humiliated, stood frozen, caught in the devastating glare of her own colossal mistake. The silence that followed Alex's quiet, devastating revelation was short-lived, quickly replaced by a ripple of murmurs that swelled into a collective sigh of satisfaction from the gathered customers. Karen, however, remained rooted to the spot, a statue carved from mortification. Her face, which had cycled through disbelief and shock, was now a deep, burning crimson. Her eyes darted wildly, like a trapped animal, from Alex to Liam, then to the staring faces of the customers, and finally, to the floor. The crumpled notebook still clutched in her hand seemed to mock her, a testament to her spectacular miscalculation. She opened her mouth, perhaps to stammer an excuse, a denial, anything, but no sound emerged. The air had been sucked from her sails, the wind from her self-righteous tirade. She was utterly, completely deflated. Alex watched her, a detached observer now, the amusement fully gone, replaced by a quiet sense of finality. He had given her every opportunity to retreat, to save face, but she had chosen to press on, driven by her own unwarranted arrogance. I believe you were just leaving, Karen. Alex's voice was calm, almost gentle, but it held the unyielding edge of absolute authority. It wasn't a question, it was a dismissal. The implication was clear. Her performance was over, and the stage was being cleared. With a small, pathetic whimper, Karen finally unfroze. She didn't look at anyone. Her shoulders slumped, and she turned abruptly, stumbling slightly as she navigated around a small table, her expensive trench coat flapping uselessly behind her. She moved with a desperate urgency, her heels clicking a rapid, almost frantic retreat towards the exit.